What's going on, YouTube? Ferocity here. I hope you guys are doing well. When it was announced earlier this week that Season 3 of Black Ops 6 was going to be delayed by 2 weeks, there was some disappointment within the Call of Duty community, and rightfully so. There are people who believe that the current content that is being offered in both Black Ops 6 and Warzone has gotten stale. And yeah, I get it, especially for Warzone players. I mean, they had Area 99 at the launch of Warzone for Black Ops 6 back in November. Since then, there hasn't been any new content, and we're approaching April. I mean, we're early March, but April's the next time you're going to get new content, but even then, it's not really new content. It's familiar content. It's recycled content, and that's not really great. I mean, I'm a little shocked that we're not even going to see Avalon most likely this year. So it means, like, Call of Duty is really just trying to bait you with nostalgia instead of trying to do anything new or different. But I guess maybe the nostalgia strings might work better than trying to get you into something new and different, because they tried that with Area 99 and we know that it didn't work. Area 99 sucks, and unfortunately that's what Warzone players have had to deal with. That or Urzikstan that they've already been playing for several months. So I get the feeling of staleness for Warzone players. And an additional 2 weeks, man, it's not great, especially when the game has so many fundamental flaws as well. So having to wait an additional 2 weeks to see if they're going to address some of these flaws is really disappointing. But then on the multiplayer side, I know that there's a lot of content in this game. There's a ton of maps, there's a ton of modes, they've had a bunch of events, but it's also mediocre. Like, there needs to be something said about quantity versus quality. And we just don't have quality of content here in Black Ops 6. A lot of the maps, uninspiring, boring, a complete and utter mess, which leads to the game feeling extremely unenjoyable and stale. And that's where we're at right now. Black Ops 6, for some, including myself, has become stale. They haven't done enough to make the gameplay loop exciting and addicting enough to keep you coming back. And this isn't to say that Season 3 is going to make everybody come back and enjoy Call of Duty again. No, it could be more of the same. We've already had 2 seasons of quantity over quality. I'm not expecting a third season to change up the formula too much. Again, we're probably going to go for quantity over quality. Maybe the 2-week delay will increase the quality a little bit, but I have my reservations. And I find it really funny that when we found out that Season 3 was going to be delayed 2 weeks, there was this like collective sigh or groan within the community, because people are like, I have to wait an additional 2 weeks for new content? That's insane. Whereas I think back to like older Call of Duty games where we wouldn't get content for months. And even then the content was all optional. If you wanted to pony up the money for new maps, you had to do that. So a lot of people just played like the same rotation of maps for an entire year. And because the gameplay loop was so much more engaging, it didn't feel as stale. Sure, people would have to take breaks. I mean, I did too. But the gameplay loop kept you coming back for more. And the current gameplay loop that Black Ops 6 has doesn't do that. So they need to distract you with more and more content instead of making the gameplay loop more enjoyable. And I think the gameplay loop in Black Ops 6 can be better, but we need some significant change in a lot of areas. Matchmaking, consistency of servers, weapon tuning, all of those things I think matter, but unfortunately we're just never going to get that. And in addition to it, we need a complete overhaul in map philosophy if Omni movement is here to stay, because the current map philosophy doesn't coincide well with Omni movement. So I'd like to see that changed altogether. But I want to get back to this idea of how older Call of Duty games were able to release less content and still keep a player base engaged over the long term. There weren't any tricks involved. There wasn't any type of algorithm to try to keep you engaged like they do now. It was just meaningful content and an enjoyable experience. And unfortunately, Call of Duty's moved away from meaningful content and an enjoyable experience to a much more artificial experience and less meaningful content. Like, I don't look at anything that they've released this year outside of maybe Grind that feels like they tried. I mean, take the event that's coming out in just a couple weeks, the Clover Craze event to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. It's another recycled event where you kill some enemies, they drop a consumable, you trade that consumable in for some rewards. Wow. Way to think outside the box. We've only seen this how many times already this year? The Terminator event, the Christmas event, I think there was one more event earlier on in the game's life cycle. It's like they're not trying to even think outside the box, and they're already all out of ideas. It's absolutely shocking that they don't try to do something different, deviate from the path that they've already set out for themselves. It's shocking, but it's going to bring players in and engage them for a short period of time. Now, could you imagine if the event was a little bit more engaging, a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit bigger even? Think how much more engagement you'd get. But it seems that Call of Duty is more focused on short-term engagement than trying to increase engagement over a long period of time. And I just don't think that short-term engagement is the right way to go about things. Like, it's kind of crazy to compare Call of Duty today to what it was like 15 years ago with paid map packs that segmented the population, and yet people just kept playing it because there was something different about it. And I mean, you can pretty easily put two and two together. They had competition back then. And I know I talk about this, but it's a big reason why Call of Duty was so successful for so long prior to this Warzone era of games. They had competition and had to continue to step up their efforts to keep people invested. Now they don't have to do that. So what do? They trick you with algorithms. They create extreme brain-dead game modes like Face Off for you to mindlessly run around in. And it's disappointing that that's what Call of Duty has sort of transformed into. Let's get extremely small maps, turn off our brains, and just run around like a bunch of chickens with our heads cut off. I don't know how people have fun with it, but like, all the more power to you if you do. It just seems incredibly boring. And unfortunately, Call of Duty seems to want to cater to that style of gameplay, that style of content, versus what they built this franchise off of. Like, I look at multiplayer and the content is just so beyond lackluster. It's embarrassing. And yet we're just going to get more of it, because I don't think they're going to learn their lesson with Season 3. They're going to distract this community with quantity of content instead of trying to persuade them with high quality of content. We're going to jam pack a bunch of stuff in so people always have something to do instead of just sitting back and enjoying the game. And it's kind of shocking that we didn't have to use these tactics years ago, but it's all Call of Duty has. We always have to have a new event. We always have to have new content to keep people invested. Why? The game on its own should stand on its own merits. Like, I go back and play Black Ops Cold War, as you're seeing here on screen. There's no events. There's no new content coming out. And yet, I'm still playing this game and enjoying it because the gameplay loop, one, is enjoyable, it's fun. And number two, there's some good quality content here. And because of that, it leads me to be a little bit more engaged with the game. And I can't do that with Black Ops 6. So when people talk about the game feeling stale, I totally get it. Black Ops 6 has worked really hard to distract you with a bunch of different things to do and not really focus on the substance of those things, not focus on the substance of the game. And as a result, people don't want to play it because they see through it. They notice that the events are just constant regurgitations of one another, recycling more and more and more and more content in hopes of what? Trying to maintain a short-term blip of success? I really wish Call of Duty would move away from a short-term viewpoint and move towards thinking bigger picture, long-term. How do we keep people invested for months on end versus short spurts of 1 to 2 weeks? But anyways, that's all that I've got to say on this topic. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts down below in that comment section. As always, guys, let me know what you think. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button. If you want to see more videos from me, please hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.